Devin Neal could have come out last year, but decided to return to school to become a Kansas Jayhawks legend. After 4 years in college, he became the school's leading rusher in rushing touchdowns, yards, and 100-yard games. An absolutely lightning quick back in terms of long speed and agility. He also has the prototypical size to succeed in the NFL at 5'10", 220 pounds. But are there some limitations to his game, and could he potentially get dragged down by the incredibly deep class at running back in 2025? If you like this content, please consider liking and subscribing, but let's take a little bit of a deep dive into Devin Neal. The main thing that I notice when scouting Neal is that explosivity, and this comes down to two main things. First of all, he has incredible one-cut agility that means that he's able to turn any routine play into an explosive one, as evidenced by the fact that in his 4 years in college, he had 115 career runs of 10 plus yards, which is an elite figure. He also has fantastic breakaway speed, so it's definitely someone that when they can get out in space, they're not going to be caught. But that one-cut lateral agility means that they are very likely to get out in space in the first place. And this is something that I was really glad to see from his game. The other thing is that I think he's exhibiting more patience behind the line of scrimmage in his senior season. When I watched a couple of games of early Devin Neal, I noticed him tend to pick one hole and go for it straight away with that lightning speed, but sometimes meant that he wasn't letting the play develop enough. But in his senior season, I definitely saw him start to exhibit a little bit more patience, actually scan for the correct hole, and then use that agility to cut back and go. This was a really exciting thing to see, and 4 years in college has clearly done wonders for Neal's game as he joins the NFL. I think the agility is also highlighted in his change of direction. I think the way in which he's able to move once he's out in the open field is incredibly impressive and will help him get yards after contact or avoid contact as a whole. The other thing is I think he is a capable receiver out of the background. I think he has relatively soft hands. He's not run a huge amount of routes and definitely hasn't been split out wide a huge amount. But when he is running routes that you run out of the backfield, checkdowns, screens, swings, wheels, I think he looked really capable. I think he also has elite ball security. 4 fumbles across 4 years in college is a genuinely absurd figure. The main flaw that I saw, however, is I think he has a very upright running style, and this allows defenders to gain leverage on him and means that he can sometimes struggle with yards after contact because he's just not able to drive through his legs and through his hips to push a defender back. This is something I would want to see him change. An upright stance is fine. We've seen that from Ashton Genty, but he needs to be able to run lower and through his pads to be able to actually drive through his legs. Then I think, I mentioned this, I don't think he's shown a huge amount in the passing game. Now, as we saw with a prospect like Kenneth Walker, just because someone hasn't done it doesn't mean that they can't. And he was such a bell cow for the Jayhawks offense that it wouldn't surprise me if they just wanted to see him running the ball and not then being used in the passing game too much. But I want to see him running routes at the combine and see how he looks, just because we don't have that much film of it. I also think he has a slightly less good contact balance than I would have liked to have seen, and this limits his ability to then break tackles. I think he's always going to rely on his speed and agility rather than power, and I just would have liked to see a little bit more well-roundedness to his game. The other thing, and this is going to be a huge issue when it comes to third downs, is his pass protection is an active negative to the team. He is incredibly bad in pass protection, and a lot of college backs are, but he's going to need to improve this when he gets to the league if he wants to even see the field on third downs, let alone catch passes. The playstyle comparison for me here was relatively easy. Bucky Irving, and particularly Bucky Irving coming out of college, where we saw him as a lightning that was going to play in a lightning and thunder combination. Not a 3-down workload, but a player who was true explosivity in a bottle. Someone who could take a play on the ground or through the air and turn it into a huge play. Now, Bucky Irving in the NFL kind of turned into something we weren't anticipating, and I say this as someone who had him as my pre-draft RB2. But I can see some similarities between their games. And even Bucky Irving didn't really work too much in short yardage situations or get too much work through the air early in the season, as that role was entirely Rashad White's. In terms of projected draft value, he's currently predicted to go around the 80 to 100 range, so late day 2, early day 3. I can see him settling about here. This is a very deep running back class, but this is the kind of workhorse back in college that a team is just going to fall in love with, especially because I think he's going to nail interviews when you see the way he talks about going back to Kansas. In terms of then his rookie draft value, I think Devin Neal probably settles towards the back of the second in both one quarterback and superflex leagues. This is someone that you can take that will have a huge amount of upside in terms of explosivity. And if it turns out that he is a plus in the receiving game, he can turn into a 3-down back. He's definitely good enough on the ground already. I think a team might fall in love with Neal and he'll end up going in the third round to potentially be the 1A to a 1B in the receiving game. If he were to go to somewhere like Pittsburgh and then be able to play in a backfield with Jaylen Warren, I can see this working well with him. But from my scouting, I don't really think he has 3-down upside, so it's potentially the back of the second for me rather than any higher. I want to know where you have Devin Neal ranked. Let me know down below in the comments. And while you are there, drop me a subscribe and check out all of the other rookie profiles available on my channel. We are at 30 now, so there is loads for you to have a look at. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.